Hello, psychonauts. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel and another episode of Sex on Psychedelics. Yes, we're going to talk about this topic once again on my channel. I've had so many powerful psychedelic experiences, and so many of them have included sex that I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle if I never talk about it. I also truly believe that the combination of sex and psychedelics leads to something that can only be described as magic. I really think sex can act like a catalyst within the psychedelic experience and lead to really transformative, soul bonding, and absolutely ecstatic experiences. So, let's get into the topic of today's video, and that is going to be my most in-depth comparison of sex on mushrooms versus sex on LSD. And to get started, I would say that sex on mushrooms tends to feel more primal. It also feels weirder in a way. I know I tend to get more giggly and things like visually look a little stranger. I also sometimes experience this feeling of like I'm discovering it for the first time. Like I've been transported in my consciousness back to a more primitive human. Like I'm a cosmic ape and I'm just discovering it all again. I had this really powerful experience on 5 grams in the shower where I kept going back and forth between this primal animal base reality and this transcendent divine cosmic experience. I'd feel my body and that materialness and that base animal world, but then my consciousness was going through these higher dimensions and I have this cosmic transcendent feel. And the combination of these two things almost created this spiral. And it was this really sublime feeling where I felt like I was something outside of myself. Like I wasn't just me, I was the driving force of evolution itself, the driving force of the universe, the driving force of life. And it was a really beautiful experience. So let's talk a little bit about sex on LSD, because compared to mushrooms, I would think sex on LSD tends to feel a little bit more electric. I also tend to feel lighter in my body, so I'm more energetic and ready to move around. I also tend to think that it is more euphoric and pleasurable. Not that mushrooms isn't, but I just get this a little bit more with LSD and I'm more easily able to reach that highest ecstatic state. Another thing with LSD is I often experience oneness a lot more strongly. So things like the blending of bodies or shared pleasures or the feeling of being one soul having sex with itself definitely comes into play. I have had many experiences where I have a hard time differentiating between whose body is whose, like where mine is and where the next one ends, or just my pleasure and my partner's pleasure is just shared and completely one. And it's a really divine, intimate, and bonding experience. I think this is probably the main reason why sex and psychedelics could be a really valuable experience for a lot of people, is that intimacy factor, that soul bonding, that deep, full communion with another being. There's just really something about the psychedelic state that allows for that full communion, that full merging of souls, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be sex. There can be that sexual energy there, but it may even be just something more telepathic. You could just be touching or cuddling, and sometimes that is even more intimate than the sex itself. Another thing with sex on LSD is I tend to get like synesthesia and the blending of senses. And I often notice that, physical touch and physical pleasure starts manifesting visually for me, and the visuals seem to become more beautiful, more colorful, and they're almost like a symphony of visuals that are perfectly in tune with all of the sexual sensations that I'm feeling. And that can be really invigorating, definitely. Another thing with sex on LSD, I am going to go back to mushrooms in a minute, but is I get this feeling of innocence, of just complete innocence in sex and complete innocence in being naked. Like it's so hard to describe, but it feels like this really pure state of consciousness. And this is another reason why I think the sex and psychedelic experience in combination can be really healing and therapeutic because it can help dissolve some of those hang-ups and really bring you into like a pure state of being able to explore your body, being able to explore a partner's body without feeling like, I don't know. I saw this quote that came from this article in the psychedelic press, and it was along the lines of sex no longer seems profane when we're traveling the astral plane. And I really think this really sums up how sex feels on the psychedelic experience. I definitely get this a little bit with mushrooms too. But there's just like an innocence to it. There's a pureness to it. And yeah, it's a really refreshing feeling. Okay, let me go back to mushrooms a little bit because there are some weirder things about sex on mushrooms. And I often get this phenomenon, or at least I've had it a couple times, that I'm being watched. And this is something that happens regardless of sex or not, but it's almost like I'm being watched from another dimension, or almost like sometimes I'm being watched from an alien. I had this one specific experience where I was enjoying myself during my psychedelic experience, and I felt like I was on some alien Truman show, and they were really getting a kick out of the way I was enjoying it. I think that kind of adds to that weirdness effect that I get with sex on mushrooms. Sex on LSD tends to feel a little bit more pure and transcendent. The mushrooms can really get weird, even though it's still really interesting, fun, and pleasurable to explore. So in conclusion, if you haven't been able to tell from the video, my favorite is sex on LSD. But let me know what your favorite is if you've tried both. I really want to know if my opinion aligns with the consensus. I did do a poll on my X account, and acid was winning by a little bit of a margin, so I think people might agree with me if they have tried both. But I'd love to know what you think, or your experiences with either one. Obviously, keep in mind it has to be safe for YouTube. But yeah, overall, I just think that sex and psychedelics is a really powerful tool to bond with a partner, to experience your own body, your own consciousness. I really think it's a tool of consciousness exploration in itself. It's just such a freeing, beautiful, sublime, magical experience that if you have the right trust in the person that you're with and the right communication, you know, I have to emphasize that trust and communication are obviously the biggest keys when we're talking about sex and psychedelics, but if you have the right conditions, it can be probably one of the most amazing experiences of your entire life. So I definitely recommend it if all those conditions are aligned for you, because it can be truly life-changing. But that is all that I have for this video, this episode of Sex on Psychedelics. Let me know what you think, and you'll see me in the next video. Bye bye.